AMP2.tv presents Tell Us Your Business, where you're invited on the air to tell us what makes your The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Welcome to Wait No More, Just Ask Jude. Are you struggling with food, body, and weight? If so, you are not alone. Millions are struggling to lose weight, chronically dieting, yo-yo dieting, emotionally eating, overeating, and binge eating. As a certified mind-body eating psychology coach, I am honored to be part of a new movement, and I can promise you this, it has nothing to do with willpower. You're not lazy and you're not crazy. Join me, Jude, each week as I shine a light on food, body, and weight that's so cutting edge and new. To be part of the conversation, call us at 888-565-1470. Find out why food determines your mood and mood determines your food. Good evening and welcome to Wait No More, Just Ask Jude. As a certified eating psychology coach, I am proud to be part of a new movement, and one that helps men and women to realize that oftentimes the weight they need to lose isn't on their bodies. I help men and women to realize that their excess weight is a symptom, a guardian angel, a messenger, whispering to them and pointing to somewhere in their life that needs attention. For more information about my eating psychology coaching and or my naturally sourced award-winning weight loss system, simply text or call me at 775-846-0075 or email me at justaskjude@gmail.com. And if you have a question or comment, please call in at 888-565-1470. I'd love it if you would be part of the conversation. Tonight's show is going to be extra special because it addresses an issue that I think we can all relate to. But before I bring on my amazing guest caller, I have a couple of questions for you. Do you often feel like a doormat? Do you constantly worry about hurting other people's feelings? Do you believe that you're less than others? Or do you avoid taking credit for anything? Do you easily attract people who need to be rescued or consoled? Are you constantly apologizing or rarely asking others for help? Or are you just being too nice, period? These are all signs that you may very well be a people pleaser. My guest caller tonight is an emotional wellness coach. She's an author and on her way to becoming a best-selling author. She speaks out about the devastating consequences of people-pleasing behavior and how it robbed her of so much joy in her life. In her book, Your Happy Life Realized, How to Stop Putting Others First and Yourself Last Now, Eve Rosenberg shares her most intimate stories. She's raw and candid, and her book is a life changer. She's super special and dear to my heart, and if she sounds just like me, it's because she's my very own twin sister and counterpart. Hi, Eve. I'm so excited that you're on the show tonight. How are you?
Well, Jude, thank you for having me, and wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for that, for your beautiful kindness and lovely words.
Well, you know how much I love you, Eve, and how you've always inspired me my whole life. Even though you're 3 minutes younger, I always looked up to you, and, I always thought you had it so together. So when I read your book, and by the way, I'm reading it for the second time. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart because it truly has been such a life changer for me. And I know that I've had a lot of my friends who have gotten your book actually call me and say, Judy, oh my gosh, it's like your sister knows me. It's like she's literally putting me in her stories. So your book is amazing, Eve. And, you mentioned that, people pleasing was the culprit in wreaking havoc in your life. So my question to you, Eve, is what really helped you finally, come to that conclusion? And most importantly, what made you decide to write your amazing book, Your Happy Life Realized, how to stop putting others first and yourself last now?
Well, that's a loaded question.
I'm sorry, it's two-part question.
No, it's a great question. There was no specific moment that I pinpointed that people-pleasing was the culprit. It happened over time, and I think my first realization, in fact, I know my first realization, was when I was faced with my third marriage falling apart. And I was in my bathroom, and I looked in the mirror after I cried for probably a half hour.
Wow.
And I had to come to the realization that I was the common denominator of all my experiences, and that everyone couldn't be crazy, that there had to be something that I was doing or not doing that I wasn't aware of. So the first step was recognizing I'm the common denominator of all my experiences. But that was just...
Wow, I love that.
Yes, that was half of the culprit, so to speak. And then it took a while after of being overly obsessed and analytical and doing whatever I could to change myself that I realized so many things, one being that I wasn't living my truth, that I was doing for others and acquiescing and accommodating and shape-shifting into what other people needed, and that in that process I lost myself. So
wow.
That was what really wreaked havoc in my life, was that I was a common denominator, but it was what I call the common behavior, which is people-pleasing,
wow.
that abandons the self to be liked and accepted by another because we're taught and modeled to be that we
right.
lose our truth and ourselves in the process. So when I discovered that, and, it's a great question, Jude, and I wish I had a specific moment of realization other than to say that little by little, as I coached my clients, as I heard people say the same things over and over, I lost myself through these circumstances. I stayed with somebody I didn't really love. I
right.
stayed in a job that I hated.
Right.
And when I put it all together, when I looked at what they were saying, what I was experiencing, I realized, oh my gosh, we were all living a lie.
Wow.
We weren't living from our heart. So people-pleasing, I really believe that most people, to some degree or another, have a little bit of the people-pleaser persona because, we all need to put on a happy face now and then. We all need to do things we don't want to do and so on. But when we do this as a regular way of being and we feel we have no other choices,
right.
then it is literally the most destructive, self-abandoning behavior that will lead to nothing more than a life unrealized and tragically lose out on leaving our gifts to the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I know that we grew up together. I mean, we knew each other before we were even born. So this is really like a special, circumstance. But, I always thought you had it so together, Eve. And, I know for myself that I always grew up with that, please like me type of persona. And, you're such an amazing emotional wellness coach. Do you find that the people-pleasing behavior is a commonality within your clients? I mean, does this come up, very frequently for you as an emotional wellness coach?
Well, all the time. I mean, and this is what led me to the discovery when you asked, when was the moment? I was led by my own journey and by what my clients share with me, what my friends share with me, watching you growing up, certainly watching our mother. Oh my God.
Right.
As I write in my book, I became a people pleaser like my mother. The only difference was my mother's doormat said welcome and mine said go away.
Right.
I became angry.
Yeah.
I was one of those people that knew at a very early stage in life that something was not right with this. I think you remember when our father was mean to our mother, and she would cry, and then the next thing you know, she put us in the car, and we were off to buy his favorite things for dinner, and she'd spend the afternoon cooking for him. So even as a child, I was glad that they were making up, but I knew something wasn't right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I knew something was wrong. You even mentioned in your book that I threw temper tantrums, and I did. You were kind of more the peacemaker, and I was just like, I threw temper tantrums because I knew that, life was meant to be happy. I remember Daddy telling me, Eve, that life wasn't meant to be, there's no such thing as happiness. Or love. They're only distractions. I don't know if you remember him telling you that, but I certainly remember him telling me that. To grow up in the same household, and isn't it interesting how we both became coaches?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Let me go back to what you said before, because I really liked and, I appreciate your candor and, just being so sweet and, admitting that you looked up to me and thought I had it all together, which, of course, is what I thought of you.
Aww.
But let me just say that is indicative of the people-pleaser persona, because people-pleasers very often don't want to let people know how insecure they are because they want to be liked. So, we will appear as if, hey, look at me. Don't you want to be friends with me? I have it all together. And it's in hiding those insecurities and in really rejecting ourselves for how bad and wrong we feel for having these insecurities.
Wow.
It's almost as if there's like a duality going on within ourselves because we're hiding not just from others, but especially from ourselves.
Wow.
So I love that you brought that up, because the I have it all together persona is what keeps the people pleaser breathing.
Wow. So they're good hiders, too, you would say. People pleasers can be good hiders.
Well, we're so well hidden. It's like, in order to people please, you have to abandon your own needs and desires. So, in truth, in a sense, you're hiding, but in another sense, you don't exist.
Wow. Well, speaking of existing, I love, I really appreciate how you started every chapter out with a quote. And one of the quotes I just feel it's so profound, and I want you to kind of, if you can, kind of take this a little further. I love the quote you used by Jim Carrey. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. And I read that and I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, that so hit home for me. So I love, as I mentioned, the quotes, at every chapter as it was opening, and you just read this amazing quote, and then you would kind of just like take that quote a little further and you would share some of your stories. So what about that quote make you say, yes, I'm putting this in my book?
Well, if that quote doesn't shake you up,
it does.
I don't know what will. But that is a profound quote. It made me shake when I read it.
Wow.
And that quote sums up, if I was allowed to put that quote on top of the book, believe me, I would. That's not legal. But that quote sums up what people-pleasing is, because the need for acceptance is so strong that you'll do anything, say anything, see anything, shapeshift into anything, just to be liked and accepted. And you do become invisible in the process because you do lose yourself.
I'm getting the chills, Eve, because that's so true.
Yes, you have to remember.
It's so true.
You have to remember that when you're taught very early on, and you get the impression that you don't matter, and so you set out to be whatever you need to be in order to matter and to be liked and loved and accepted in the world,
that's right.
You have to become invisible, because if your expression is discouraged, and you express yourself and you lose people over that, or you become rejected or bullied or whatever, then being invisible is a path to being loved in the people-pleaser deception of promise.
Right. Wow. That's so profound. And, you have a chapter called The Path to Self-Forgiveness. And one of the things I remember you started out the chapter as really coming as a coach was, you don't sound angry to me. And that kind of really irked you. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yes. Well, let me tell you something. I have the honor and privilege to support some of the most amazing men and women in this world. And when they share with me their achievements and what they've done, I'm like, I feel so intimidated sometimes. I can't even believe that, oh my goodness, these people are unbelievably well established.
Wow.
And yet they tell me these stories that I say is worthy of a Lifetime movie. There's just can't, that saying, truth is stranger than fiction. And they tell me these stories that I want to start throwing things across the room on their behalf, and they don't sound angry.
Right.
And I can't believe it. They're in these monotone, non-reactive voices, and I'm like, wait a second. You just told me a story that is completely horrific, and you don't even sound angry.
Wow.
And they go on to explain, well, yes, they are, and still there's no change in their voice. And I know at that moment that they can't go there. They just can't go there, and that they minimize their trauma and their drama and their pain. And as long as you're doing that, you can't fully forgive, because you cannot forgive what you have not acknowledged. And if you're not, I'm not preaching for people to be the victim, but the only way to become the victor is to really own that you were victimized and to stop minimizing it, to get to the truth, to really own it, spill it out there.
Right.
And that's the only way that you can move on from it.
Wow. Well, I just want to hold up your book again and just really stress to the listeners out there, this is such a life changer. I mean, haven't you noticed a change in me, Eve? I mean, I remember the other day, my sister Eve and I, I'm talking to you, Eve, but I'm just letting the listeners know as well. I know Eve whenever, as siblings, we argue. Siblings always do. And I know for me as a rule in my life, I was kind of the one that always just didn't like the confrontation or the conflict. And depending on, regardless of how I felt, I would always be the one to say, let's get along, I love you, let's not do this. And a lot of times I would do that even when I was, like you said, with some of the people that don't sound angry. I just wouldn't somehow embrace my anger and just stew about it for a little bit. But so the other day, Eve, we had one of our little spats, and I didn't answer you back all day long, right? I didn't answer, and I was really proud of myself. And then, I was watching television, and of course I heard the bell, and it was from you, my amazing, beautiful sister, and I was so happy that, everything was fine. But, I mean, your book has helped me so much. And And even with just this one little example, I mean, I could go into so many more examples, but I really wanted to thank you for really changing my life, Eve. And, you know, this is your happy life realized, you know, how to stop putting others first and yourself last now. And I just really want to thank you, Eve, because it really, truly has changed me. I mean, and I want to know from you if you've noticed a change in me.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I see your beautiful bitch coming out, and that's exactly the part that a lot of women and men, too, don't want people to see. And the truth of it is sometimes it's appropriate to just come out there and say to someone,
right, it's an archetype,
straight in their eyes, you can't treat me like that.
Right.
And, yes, you absolutely accommodated and acquiesced, and to tell you the truth, you know, being a sister and always, you know, seeing that, you know, there was only so much our relationship can develop when it's that superficial.
Exactly.
So I am so happy that you found benefit in my book, and you know how much I love you and know your potential, and you're amazing, and I'm sure everyone listening knows how amazing you are, and I hope that everyone that's listening knows how amazing they are. And if they have any question, this book is definitely, I promise, it won't disappoint. I'm hearing really good things from people. The last time I heard people say they finished a book so quickly, it was with 50 Shades of Grey. And I have to say that even though this is a different genre, that this too is an exciting endeavor, because as much as I wrote the book about me, it's really about you.
Right, exactly. And can you give us a sneak peek, you know, because I know I have the book, but could you just give us a little, like maybe one tool that you have in your book, or any advice you would give to a person that's saying, wow, this is so me, what do I do about it? I mean, my first piece of advice is, you know, get the book. I mean, absolutely get the book, because this isn't just a book about Eve's stories that are so intimate and she's so raw and candid, but she also gives you an arsenal of tools so that you too can overcome your people-pleasing behavior. So what's one tool or part of a tool, or maybe just a comment as to some advice you could give someone that's struggling with people-pleasing behavior?
Well, like you know, the book is full of tools. Yeah. What I will say in this moment is that one of the tools and practices I have in the book, which I love, which is whenever I'm feeling insecure or I'm having a wound open up, you know, one of my I'm not good enough wounds, whatever that may be. And in the past, I used to withhold from myself. I used to not allow myself something, or I used to overindulge or beat myself up because of an insecurity that came up. And now when that happens, what I do instead is I honor myself. So I treat myself just as well as if I was really confident at that moment.
Wow.
So it's a little bit of effort at first, but the more you do it, the more you'll notice that the more you honor yourself, even when you're not feeling good, especially when you're not feeling good, that not only does that feeling dissipate, but you actually become more confident, because you don't need to be this or that or whatever it is you think you need in order to treat yourself well.
Wow. And when you say that you honor yourself, give us an example. I mean, what is it like? You nurture yourself? Like, for instance, like if someone loves hot bubble baths and they were not feeling very well about themselves that day, like they would nurture themselves and take a hot bubble bath. Can you give us an example of what you mean by honoring yourself?
Yeah, honoring yourself is doing something that makes you feel good. Okay. And that's going to be very personal to that person. So for me, for example, if I cook myself a meal where I have to go out of my way and it has several ingredients, like a recipe that I would make for a guest that was coming over, but it's something I wouldn't ordinarily just make for myself. I'll go out and make that meal for myself.
Wow, I love it. I really love it. And you're coming out with another book, Eve. I know you're coming out with a couple of other books. Can you give us maybe a sneak peek about what we can look forward to? Because I absolutely loved your book. As I said, Your Happy Life Realized, How to Stop Putting Others First and Yourself Last Now. I'm reading it for the second time, and I can't wait for your next book. So can you just give me like a sneak peek about what it might be about so I could just have something to look forward to?
Absolutely. Well, I'm working on two books at the same time. One is called Selfish, Eat Well, Serve Many. And that's going to be a book that really tells a story that inspires self-care and breaks down the myth of being selfish is wrong. So that's pretty much what that book is about. The other book is called I Don't Want to Take Care of My Mother, How to Forgive the Woman Who Neglected You. Wow. And that, of course, is a heart-wrenching love story about how I fell in love with our mother through admitting how much I couldn't stand her. And that's going to be a real eye-opening book because, like you know, I like to talk about what people are thinking about.
Wow. Well, I am so excited, Eve. I mean, those books sound amazing. And as I said, your book for me was such a life changer, and I love the way you were so raw and candid and so intimate with your stories, and you just kind of let everyone in, and there was just no hiding there. I mean, you were just a real, as I mentioned, raw and candid, and it was just so life-changing for me. So I so appreciate you coming on the show tonight. And how do the listeners get in touch with you? Oh, I see we have Your Happy Life Realized, and that's Eve at lessonslearnedinlove.com. So I've just been hit with the 2-minute bell, Eve. So I want to thank you so much for calling in tonight, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you, Jude.
Love you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Pick up Your Happy Life Realized, How to Stop Putting Others First and Yourself Last Now by Eve Rosenberg. Amazing life-changing book on Amazon. People pleasers are motivated, by a desire for approval, for external validation, and they often are very insecure in relationships. And this insecurity makes them conform to people's opinions, to their expectations, without them really wanting to. This can make it hard for them to say, anything, to say no, even when they're presented with something that they really don't appreciate or like. We're aware of airplane safety, of putting that oxygen mask on first before we help others. Well, this is true and applies to emotional wellness as well. When we help others before we help ourselves, we all run out of oxygen. People-pleasing is not a behavior to avoid or elude. See you next week on Wait No More. Just Us Two. Thank you for tuning in and making my show great. Remember, food determines your mood and your mood determines your food. See you next week on Wait No More, Just Ask Jude.